Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. When I first tuned into the Eastern Conference Finals, my heart was filled with hate. I hate the Celtics. I hate the Celtics. So I just want to see them fail. I want to see them suck. I want to watch them go down and burn. That's what was keeping me invested in the early stages of this series. Now that I'm watching it play out, now that I'm watching the Miami Heat kick their ass and handle them with ease and blow them out with all their role players, Gabe Vincent, Strus, Martin, Duncan Robinson, who got his ass sent to the bench last year, and Spo goes, "You're not good enough." Essentially, you're not ready for this moment yet. Here's the Miami Heat desperately needing him, and he's there because the Miami Heat just have a way about themselves that has them rolling no matter what. Very underwhelming roster. Bang, here they are in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm just saying, on paper, you have two white guys. You got guys who played all over the damn place. Not your traditional high draft picks, but they developed these players, and they knocked down big shots. In Game 6, the Sixers did have huge wide-open threes. Clunk, iron, back iron, airballed, you name it. They got open looks, but they don't have the right players. From top to bottom. I originally thought Joel Embiid hurt this team so much. If he improves, and hopefully a new coach can teach him the ways, but if he gets better, that's going to be a recipe for success. I don't know if you're deep enough. George Niang, Jalen McDaniels. There's no way in hell that will ever get you to where you want to be. Maybe you get past the second round because you keep knocking at the door. But ultimately, don't we want a championship? Tobias Harris is a role player getting max money. This is why they can't compete, because they're missing so much. Nobody's afraid of the spacing on the Sixers. Joe Missoula, who fucking blows, by the way. Let me say that again. Because I want you to realize how terrible Joe Missoula is at his job. Joe Missoula fucking blows. Blows. One-on-one, Grant Williams on Jimmy Butler. That's never gonna work. But because so many guys can make their wide open looks, and those guys are drilling three after three after three, confident. Ball's moving. Great ball movement. You can't pull defenders away from the perimeter. You can against Philadelphia. PJ Tucker? Come on, man. He had a nice quarter. And we're praising him like he's Michael fucking Jordan. These cats on Miami, they do it every night. Go look at the game logs. Strus, 12, 15, 17, 16. DeAnthony Melton does it in Game 1, and once again, we act like he put on the greatest performance in basketball history. Do it every day. Do it every single time you touch the floor. Where are those role players? You're limited because it's a bias. We had Pete Pompey on the best show ever, and he brought up the fact that, because of the situation, you might have to wait until the trade deadline to move on from that asset into Tobias and see what you can get in return, because at that point, teams will have more knowledge on who they are, more willing to shred some of their assets and say, fine, we'll take on some money. It won't hurt us because it's an expiring deal. If that's the case, come on. Now we have to wait until a trade deadline and then ask all these pieces to figure it out on the fly. We've done that a billion times already. Here's one silver lining, if you will. Jimmy Butler did not do this in any other spot he's ever been in. He didn't do it in Philadelphia. He wasn't even averaging 20 points per game in the postseason. Plenty of reasons why. Ben Simmons was a fraud. He had the ball in his hands for the 3 quarters, and then Jimmy Butler was asked to change it all in the 4th quarter. They committed to Ben Simmons over Jimmy Butler. It wasn't Tobias. Tobias was a cause and an effect. He was the effect of deciding to stick with Ben Simmons and with Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler was not doing this in Minnesota. He was not doing this with Chicago. And Jimmy Butler is 33 years old. Over the last 2 years or so, 3 years, starting in the bubble, is when he really established himself as more of a killer at this time of the year. Joel Embiid's 29. I wish he was deeper. I wish he was farther in the playoffs. I wish Joel Embiid got that under his belt, but he hasn't. Jimmy Butler, 31, 32, 33. That's when Jimmy Butler became this. Don't just get tied to the right now and lose track of sense. All right, lose track of time. That's real. Everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own journey. Last year, Jason Tatum, as a young 20-year-old, I guess he was around 24, was in the NBA Finals. Now he's having a hard time getting out of the 3rd round to duplicate that level of success. He's been awful, awful. You know Pritchard and Grant Williams lead the Celtics in 4th quarter scoring at this time after 3 games, and they're down 3-0, and they got their soul snatched from them. I can't believe Grant Williams thought it would be a great idea to wake up the beast or to just poke the bear. You knew Jimmy Butler would respond to that, right? He had the timeout in Al Horford's face. Al Horford, he's been having a tragic postseason. 29% from 3 in the playoffs. In the regular season, he shot 45% from behind the arc. But those old legs seem to be getting tired. You ask him to take a lot of jump shots, I think over time, that will wear you down. And I'm hearing all sorts of Boston media getting upset because there were videos surfacing at practice before Game 3 of Marcus Smart with a clipboard talking to the teammates. No Joe Missoula insight, Al Horford being the leader in the middle of the circle, getting the guys all rah-rahed up. Now, I don't think you need to ask a head coach to rah-rah guys in an Eastern Conference Finals when you're playing the Miami Heat. You'd think that they would be prepared enough. But there is a role of the head coach, and if that's where he needs to be stronger, then so be it. But Boston media is like, what does this guy do? What does he do? He asked Grant Williams to stop Jimmy Butler. That isn't going to be beneficial. The Sixers, the double big, is so easy because of the surrounding pieces that suck, that aren't good enough. Sorry. Not good enough. That doesn't take Joel Embiid off the hook because Joel wasn't good in closing time. Game 6 didn't demand the ball more. James Harden, hello, wake up, get your guy the basketball, get the MVP, the ball down the 4th quarter stretch. But we had Jim Lynam on, Coach Lynam. He was so fired up during this interview, and it was probably the most electric thing I've heard. He was all pissed, and it's disappointing that he was pissed, but you could hear the passion of the sport, the passion of the coaching angle that he had on what went wrong for your Sixers. And the one thing he said was, with Doc Rivers and the coaching advantage, Doc Rivers got some of his bench pieces great looks. Joel Embiid, or anybody, not just bench pieces, but anybody. If you're the coach, you want them to make the right basketball play. Joel giving the ball up with that much separation between the closest defender, even if it's not one of your top dogs, it's the NBA. And when you have that much time and that much space to work with, you pass the rock. You live with the right basketball play. LeBron James, this is my side of it. That's to wrap up what Jim Lynam was stating on should Embiid have been more aggressive. Could he have gotten the ball? And to be fair, he did value what that is and how much that's important too. At the end of the day, though, the head coach drew something up. If DeAnthony Melton was on that day, Doc Rivers might not be fired. And then the whole entire narrative has changed on who the Sixers are. But that's the way the ball rolls sometimes, and we can't change where we are at this particular moment. It stings and it sucks, But we're here and we have to accept it. Watching this series has hurt me, though, in ways that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't prepared. The Boston Celtics, for example, are prepared to lose this series. When it's finally over, it's like, thank the Lord, okay. Because you're kind of embracing the sorrow and you know it's only time until you're in pain and you're thinking about the New England Patriots, I guess. But that's not the same anymore considering you lost the best quarterback to ever live. And now they're realizing how Bill Belichick is completely different when Mac Jones is the quarterback and then you hire Joe Judge, a combination between Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to compete for an offensive coordinator job. They're living in hell, especially after the Boston Bruins had a historic season and failed to get out of the first round. But I'll stop with that. Can you be mad at Doc versus Joe Missoula when DeAnthony Melton had to make his shots? I get that argument. I do. Here's where Doc Rivers failed miserably for me, though. You're seeing how bad Missoula is. No way a double big should make it look the way it made it look. I just can't accept it. I'm sorry. You have to give me something more from that counter by Joe Missoula. I wasn't satisfied with the attempts by Doc Rivers after Boston changed up their scheme and after Boston went with a different tactic and started Robert Williams. Did anybody see something creative enough to at least put your head down on your pillow at night and say, Doc gave us everything. Doc maximized everything with this roster. It just fell apart because the players were miserable, even though that was a huge chunk of it. I've always been a big proponent of your NBA head coaches can't get in the way. That's what you asked them to do. Don't get in the way. Eric Spoelstra is in his own world right now, though, pantsing Joe Missoula. And Doc Rivers probably would have got pants in an embarrassing fashion, too. We can't write in the Sixers beating this Miami team. They don't have that same killer. The Sixers are fragile. They're closer to the Celtics than they are the Miami Heat. You can't lose to a Boston Celtics team that looks like this. They're not the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. Jason Tatum had 5 awesome quarters to finish up the series against Philly. He's been trash this postseason run. So why did he come alive against the Sixers? Schematically, how the Miami Heat are picking him up? I mean, you're seeing so many games in a row where the fourth quarter he's non-existent. Combined, him and Jaylen Brown in the game was, I'll find the stat exactly, one of 17 or so from behind the arc. In a must-win game, you can't fall behind. Down 0-3. No team ever comes back from that. I saw a big graphic. Here it is. 1 of 14 from 3, 7%. 6 turnovers. They were 12 of 35 from the field, which was 34%. How? Defensively, guard play. Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, that was always a troublesome with your backcourt. Your front court in Joel Embiid gives you life. He protects the rim and he makes poor perimeter defenders, believe it or not, actually look better. And it's not pretty. So take that for what it is. You can't lose to this Boston team that just completely shows no fight. It tells me more about who we are. And all of it is sad. I feel worse today after a week of ranting and venting and getting it all out Normally, Monday, heavy overreaction. You want to talk trade Embiid? Let's talk trade Embiid. You want to scream about Doc? Let's scream about Doc. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, it lightens up a bit. By Thursday, it's settled in more, and now you're looking ahead. So here's Monday after a whole week of following that loss, and the Eastern Conference Finals makes it worse. If this was a 7-game series and they were going toe-to-toe and you couldn't compete with either of these teams, it sucks, but at least it makes more sense. Now, I am dazed and confused. Now, I'm always a big NBA players, they're why you win or lose 98% of the time in this league. Spoelstra, who nobody is Eric Spoelstra, has me reconsidering a tad. Do I need to put more emphasis on that guy? Do I have to study what they do more? Not so much regular season, because it's totally different. You don't prepare for your opponent the same way. Once adjustments in 7-game series and, you see what the opponent's coach does, and then you'll make your reaction to it, and then you'll see what they do to react to your adjustment, and it's sort of a chess match. In the regular season, though, you're going back-to-back, Chicago, Minnesota, this team, that team, whatever. Finish in the top 3, prove that when you face Milwaukee in the regular season, you face your biggest rival, the New York Knicks, who had some spunk this year with Julius Randle and with Jalen Brunson as well. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell, Garland. Just give us some sort of warmth to realize that we know that you're an incredible team. When we get to the playoffs, it's time to prove it. Right? You face Boston in Boston. Give us a W. Game 27 of the regular season. Playoffs, maybe I need to look more at the coach, because Doc Rivers got fooled and overwhelmed by Robert Williams. I can't accept it. I won't allow for that to be okay. And I'm giving everybody their criticism within range of what they bring to the table. So that means if Joel Embiid has to feel it a bit more and get more of a harsher tone, so be it. If James Harden, the guy with the ball in his hands, needs to be attacked more than DeAnthony Melton, so be it. All within range of what they provide and the spark that they are. And for Doc's case, Joe Missoula, how does he sleep at night? How does Doc go to bed at night? Joe Missoula danced around you by looking at Robert Williams. It gets crazier every time I say it. I don't know where they go from here. I'm more lost than I ever have been. Can you see why this is hurting? Could you see why this is putting me in a state of panic and fear? Because I originally was really just hoping that Joel Embiid will become more of a monster if they hire Nick Nurse, if they hire Monty Williams, if they hire Budenholzer. Someone changes the direction of Joel Embiid, because even when we thought he reached his ceiling and he reached his peak, he became MVP. He became more efficient in certain spots on the floor. He added the nail and became really a master at the craft. So who's to say that there won't be another addition? I believe there will be. I believe he is not accepting this loss in the way that he went out. It bothers him. But now it's, can you survive with Niang? Where would Niang be for the Miami Heat? Would he even play? Would he be the ninth man? You're in desperation mode with George Niang. You're on your hands and knees begging that he cashes any sort of threes and relying on it to be a momentum shifter. Like, you are that needy of George Niang. DeAnthony Melton would be backbench with Spo. Spo will probably get a lot more juice out of him, and he'd be a 43% shooter from three in the postseason on wide open shots probably, because they have something that doesn't make sense to me down there. It's easy when there's no taxes. There's easy when it's that weather. Big time money. Don't worry about all that bullshit. With tax, you're good to go. So they'll always be in the mix. But Spo dealt with LeBron James. Pat Riley believed in him. Stayed with him. Showed belief. And many years later, they're bringing a team that on paper, all due respect to Jimmy Butler, I still think talent for talent, the Boston Celtics, individually speaking, have more individual talent. But the way they go to work every day, the way they attack their craft in Miami, it's the way that they groom these players to be unbelievable. Not just serviceable. Shake Milton had some life in the NBA, okay. He made Josh Richardson a valuable option. And then they can move on from guys like him and be okay because they replenish with a whole new wave. Strus, Gabe Vincent. We're talking Eastern Conference Finals to go to the NBA Finals. They breed them different. But if that's the ceiling, and that's what is capable of being done in this league, do I have to hold the Sixers to that level and say that's the bar, go match it? Or can we be satisfied with less? They're on their own island, though. Nobody can replicate that. So there is a part of me that wonders, is that fair? I can't accept failure, though. And that's all I've been really used to seeing, is second-round failure. There's worse failure than this. But as the current mode of Sixers basketball, this is what I have to go off of. Let's kick it to the phones. These calls are Game 7 reactions and Doc Rivers fired. That's the name of this folder. So a bunch of leftovers from prior, but let's do this.
Yo, bro. So how am I feeling about Glenn Rivers being let go? I mean, to be honest, it wouldn't matter. You could have Spoelstra there at Game 7 versus Boston. We were losing regardless the way the entire team was playing, or at least the main stars for that matter. But, I mean, honestly, I'm happy Doc being let go because, honestly, now's the time. There's a lot of talent out there. You got Monty Williams, Nick Nurse, Kenny Atkinson. I mean, there's a lot of options out there, so now's the time. I say good riddance to Doc. I mean, we'll get to see. I mean, assuming who knows how the offseason's going to go. I don't trade and be not. Who knows? But I'm ready for some new coaching blood in there. I'm ready to see some development, bro. When's the last time we developed a player? Besides Joel and Maxey, who have we developed?
You really haven't developed anybody. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on Daryl Morey for the return. So when he makes an acquisition, the value and the return that he's getting, it's all in now. There's no wiggle room. Be effective. Because of where Joel Embiid is at and where Harden was at in their careers. There's no time. You can't waste a season. You have to maximize every great year that Joel Embiid has left. And with Doc Rivers, that was never part of his DNA. Him and Sam Cassell did work with Tyrese Maxey and has expanded his game tremendously. I'm not devaluing that player, but he was always going to be great. He has that in him. Where is the gem, the diamond in the rough? Someone who started out with a lot of raw intangibles and raw skills, and you molded them. They molded Maxey. I don't want to say that the wrong way. Maxey, in a lot of organizations, though, you ask him with the ball in his hands to go fly around, buzz around, and be Tyrese Maxey, and I think he flourishes under a lot of coaches. I want an example of someone Doc Rivers specifically looked at and said, let me get my hands on you. I'm looking at Isaiah Joe and Charles Bassey, which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about potential that was once on this franchise or once in this franchise and on the roster that they let go because they wanted to get more of a veteran presence. And there may have been guys that Spoelstra, hypothetically speaking, could turn into a monster. Maybe. We'll never know. Unless one day they find themselves in Miami. I can't argue that, though. Where's Strus? Where's Vincent? There's no such thing. Furkan can't play. Shake Milton can't play. Springer's a high draft pick. Let's go to the next call.
Yo, bros, love the show. Doing a great job on that and the best show ever, so keep it up. I was hyped about this move. I was a little bit excited, and then I thought about it and thought, well, it's cute. It's adorable. It's cherubic. But that's only a Band-Aid fix. The main issue is the front office. And as long as Harris and Elton Brand is still running the ship, it's going to crash. It's going to repeatedly crash into Titanic. We're at the point where we're just throwing boiled noodles on the wall to see what sticks. And usually teams that do that, they get lucky once in a blue moon, but I just don't see much. I mean, as for the coach that I would like to see hired, either somebody within the organization or Kenny Atkinson, the guy. Somebody said Kenny Atkinson, a winner from the Warriors as an assistant coach.
It's funny, that's two people in a row that brought up Kenny Atkinson. I don't think he'd move the needle for me as much as a Monty Williams, a Budenholzer, or a Nick Nurse. So I think I'd rather totally go in a completely different direction than Kenny Atkinson. He did spend some time on the sidelines in Brooklyn, and maybe you could say it was unfair the way that he was let go with the whole drama that was starting to shift in that franchise, but whatever. It is what it is. We'll see. There's a lot of good names out there. It is a good year to be active in a coaching hire. I don't hate the ownership group. I'm questioning Morey, though, and I'm normally a Morey defender, and I'm not saying that he stinks. I still give him a lot of credit for a lot of the moves he made when he first arrived because you had to deal with Al Horford. You had to deal with Richardson. You had to deal with Tobias Harris. You had to deal with a bunch of garbage, and he did maneuver through some of that pretty well, in my opinion. So I'm not trying to rip him into a billion pieces. He wasn't handed gold the moment he walked in the door. With that said, he knew what job he took, and he knew what the end goal needed to be. So they haven't been able to get out of that second round yet, and he made that fully noticeable when he was interviewed after the last game ended. So he knows what the big goal is. I'm questioning Daryl Morey because I'm questioning Embiid, I'm questioning Harden, I'm questioning the bench, I'm questioning Doc. This Celtics series opened my eyes up to questioning everything. Everything. That's the only way I know how to do it at this point. So I don't have the answers to it all. I'm more along just throwing it into the atmosphere. And we'll see if we ever get the answers from the basketball gods. We'll find out. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I will catch you on the next one.